Daf Pei Chesam and Beis, the Mishnah at the top of the Yomid. If a person says to his Eved, to his slave, say, Ushchoit Elias HaPesach, go and shach the Korban Pesach for me, but he didn't specify which animal that the Eved should take. Should he take a lamb, or should he take a gdi, a kid? He didn't specify. We say, Shachad Gdi Yoich. Whatever the Eved does, the master's nicha with it. He's nicha with it. And therefore, if he shechs a gdi, then we say the master is nicha and he can eat from it as a kosher korban pesach, and he can eat from it. Rashi explains, even if normally he doesn't choose a gdi for the korban pesach. Normally he does a tle, but in this case he didn't specify, and he's nicha with whatever the Eved does. So we say therefore shach gdi yoich, shach tle yoich. If he shachted both of them, then yoichel min harishon. We say that the first one is the one that's a kosher korban pesach. He eats from the first one, and the second one is burnt. Next case is shakach ma amar le. But let's say the master did specify. He specified a particular animal, but the Eved forgot what the master told him. Ketzad yaseh. What does he do? Yishchat le'ogdi. He shachs both a tle and a gdi v'yomer, and he says, Im gdi amar li rabbi. If my master said that it should be a kid, then gdi shaloi v'tle shali. Then the gdi is his, and the lamb is mine. Being ple amar li rabbi, but he said the opposite. If he said to shach for him the lamb, then atle shaloi v'gdi shali. Then it'll be the reverse. Then the tle is his and the gdi is mine. And as Tzveres Yisrael points out, this is not totally on Breira, because the determination was made. It's not that we have to retroactively determine what was done. The determination was made. It's just that we don't know, or the slave doesn't know, he forgot what the master told him. But we don't have to be mevar it. It's just we're missing that yediyah. So therefore, whichever one it is, he's shechting it for the master, whichever one the master told him. Then, so this is the case we have if the Eved forgot. But the Seif of the Mishnah says, continuing the Mishnah says, Shachach Rabba Mayamar Loi. But if the master himself forgot what he told the slave, he forgot which one he specified, they both have to be taken out to be burnt, because we don't know which one is for the master and which one is for the slave. We won't be able to clarify it because the master himself forgot. But they're potter from the Pesach Sheni, because nevertheless the Korban Pesach is kosher. But we don't know which one is for which person, so it can't be eaten. It has to be taken to be burnt. But they were yaitzu with the Korban Pesach anyway, because it was done for, each animal was shachted for its proper owner. We don't know which one it was, but the intent was that it should be shachted for the proper owner. Frekti Gemara, Pshita. When the Reisha of the Mishnah says, that if the master did not specify, then whatever the Eved does, whatever the slave does is kosher, so it's pshita. If he didn't specify, so it's either one he's nicha with. Like we explained, Rashi explained in the Mishnah, means to say even if he normally has a tle, for instance, he normally chooses a tle and he eats a tle and he eats after the Korban Pesach. And nevertheless, if he shechted a gdi, it's still kosher. And the reverse as well. If he shechts a tle, even though he's accustomed, if he's accustomed to gdi, it's also kosher. So it's that there's no kapeni here whatsoever, and whatever the Eved does, it's kosher. Zog the Gemara weiter, the Mishnah says, then he has to eat from the first one. A Brisa says, you can't register for two Korban Pesachs. You can't register for both of them. So therefore, how can it be that we say that he eats from the first one then neither of them should be kosher. Neither of them be kosher. Now, Tosfos explains, well, why don't we say over here, just say the Tana is relying on Bremer? That we're saying that we don't know which one it is, but say that the reason why that he shuts both of them, that we say Yochel Min Harishon, because we say that Huver Davar L'Mafreya, and we say Huver Davar L'Mafreya, that's what the owner wanted. Tosfos said, no, we can't say it's totally in Breira, because if it was totally in Breira, you would not have to say, you wouldn't say that he eats from the first one. If it's totally on Breira, he can choose whatever one he wants, and we would say Huver Davar L'Mafreya, that's the one he really wanted. The fact that we're saying that you have to have the first one, it shows that it's not. We're not relying on Breira. So therefore, how can we say over here that it's kosher? The Bryce says, Ein nimna shnei pesachim ke'echad. More answers, Masnisim de Melech Malka. Our Mishnah is talking by a king and a queen, meaning that very affluent people, and they really don't care. They have an abundance of all kinds of meat, as Tosfos says, and they're not particular. Whether the Korban Pesach should be dafka from one or the other. They have an abundance of meat, and therefore, the Mishnah says, therefore, the very first one, they're deemed to be a nicha with the first one, whichever one it is, and they're yaitza with the first one. But the Bryce is talking about a case where a person would be particular. If a person is particular, then you can't be nimna shnei pesachim ke'echad, you can't register on two pesachim. And if we're not relying on Breira, then you can't register on two. The determination has to be made, and since there's no determination, then both of them are apostle, and you cannot be yaitza with either of them. But our Mishnah is talking about a Melech Malka. A Gemara brings a raya. Tanya, we have a raya from that from the following brayso. It says, "Ein nimna shnei pesachim ke'echad." You can't be nimna registered with two pesachim. U'maisa b'melech Malka shalom alav deim. There's a maisa of the king queen that said that of deim su v'shlachtu aleinu es Pesach. Go and shach for the Korban Pesach. He also shach aleim shnei pesachim, and they shachted two. Bo v'shal es Melech. They asked the king what to do. Amar lahem l'chu v'shalu es Malka. He said, go ask the queen. Bo v'shalas Malka, they asked the queen, Amar lahem, l'chu v'shalas Rabbi Gamliel, go ask Rabbi Gamliel. Bo v'shalas Rabbi Gamliel, Amar lahem, Melech Malka, the Daitan Kala Leim, the king and queen are not particular, Yochel Min Harishon. Then eat from the first one. Anon, but average people who are particular, they don't have such an abundance, then they're both possible, because you can't register for two Korban Pesach. Vishu Pamach, there was another mice that Nimsa Halto b'Beis HaMitbachayim. There was a lizard that was found in the kitchen. A lizard is one of Shemini Shvatzim, and therefore a dead lizard is Matama, and it would be Matama the food. So therefore, Bikshul, the Tam is called Surakul, and therefore the Misharsim thought to be Matama the whole Suda, because they found this dead lizard over there. Bo v'shalas Amelech, they asked the king what to do. Amar lahem l'chu v'shalas Malka, go ask the queen. Bo v'shalas Malka, Amar lahem l'chu v'shalas Rabbi Gamliel, go ask Rabbi Gamliel. Bo v'shaloi, so they asked him, Amar lahem Beis HaMitbachayim Risech Eitzayin. They asked that the kitchen, was it found in a hot or cold dish? Where was it found in the kitchen? So what were the circumstances? Amar Loi, they said, it was a hot dish. Amar Lahem, go pour a cold liquid over it, pour it over the lizard, and see what happens. They poured a cup of cold liquid over it, and started to wiggle around and to squirm, so this was alive, meaning he wanted to test out. Just because it has an appearance that it's dead doesn't mean that really it is. If it was in a hot dish, maybe it just had that appearance, pour the cold liquid, and they saw that it was squirming, it was alive. Therefore, V'tihir Rabbi Gamliel is called a Sadakula. He was Matar the whole Suda, because it was alive, it wasn't it wasn't dead. Nimsa Melech Toli b'Malka, so we see that the king was dependent on the queen. V'Nimsa Malka Toli b'Rabbi Gamliel, and the queen was dependent on Rabbi Gamliel. V'Nimsa is called Suda Toli b'Rabbi Gamliel, and the whole Suda, the ability to eat from the whole Suda, was dependent on Rabbi Gamliel. So the Mishnah said, "Vaita that shakach mashamal rabbi," if the slave forgot what the master told him, and therefore he says, and he makes a tie. He says, if the master told him the tlad, then the tlad is for the master, and the gedi is for me. And if it's the opposite, then it should be the opposite. Strike the Gemara Shaloi. What does it mean for him? He says, if it's a gedi, then the gedi should be for the master. But if not, the tlad should be for him. What does it mean for him? Rabbi. What does the slave really own? He can't own anything. Anything that he owns, automatically it belongs to the master. It automatically belongs to the master. So what does it mean for him? The slave goes to a shepherd who the master frequently buys from. Who's interested in the benefit of the master. And the shepherd gives one of the animals to the slaves on condition that the master has no ownership in it. Meaning, since this is for the benefit of the master, because otherwise he won't be able to have the Korban Pesach. Since it's for the benefit of the master, therefore we assume that the master would be nicha with this, that he wants this, and therefore the slave goes to a shepherd that's a friend of the master, and he'll therefore be makneh to the slave almanas that the rabbi doesn't have rishus, and therefore the slave is the owner, and he'll be able to therefore bring the Korban Pesach for the master through this tanai by making this condition. Shakach rabba masha amaloi, but if the master himself forgot what he said, then you can't eat from either one of them, the Mishnah said, and it's it's taken out to be burned, but beturim, they're parted from Pesach Sheni. This that we say they're parted from Pesach Sheni, that's only if the master forgot and after the zrika was done. To be eaten is done, because in that case, where he forgot only later, that means that at the time of the zrika, Korban Pesach could have been eaten. So at the time they did the avodah, he did remember, and therefore the Pesach could be eaten, and it's a kosher korban. Now, if you forgot after the fact, it's already a kosher korban, and then the meat can't be eaten, but the korban is kosher, and they're parted from Pesach Sheni. So that's only if he forgot after the zrika. The beaten is zerdam havechazal achila. But if he forgot even before the zrika, the chi is zerdam loy havechazal achila, which means that the time that the zrika was done, the time the avodah was done, it couldn't be eaten because he didn't remember which was which. He says in such a case, in that case, he is chayav to bring the Pesach Sheni. Some say this chilek is referring to the case of Brisa, which is as follows. You have 5 owners that the skins of the Korban Pesach got mixed up with each other. And however, after we see that in one of them there was a wart, there was a yabels, which is a mum, which means that one of them, the korban, had a mum, which is a apostle of korban. But we don't know which korban is possible. Kulan, Yitzhak, and Beis Sreifa. Then all of them have to be burnt, because we don't know which was a apostle of korban. We know the skin of one of them, but we don't know the meat from which one it was, which one the skin of the meat of which korban it was. So we don't know which korban or the meat of which one was from a Pesach that was possible from a Baal Mum. Kol Yitzhak, Beis Sreifa, but a Turm Las is Pesach Sheni. But they're all parted from Pesach Sheni. They're all now. Tomorrow we'll discuss this. Why they're all parted from Pesach Sheni? 4 of them are kosher. 1 is possible. Why are they all parted from Pesach Sheni? We'll see shortly. But so here on this case, this is where Abai makes his chilek. Omar Abai says, Lo yishonu ela shenisar v'lachar zrika. That's only if they got mixed up after the zrika. Because then we say they're part of Pesach Sheni, the be'idna de izrachtam, mi hava chazal achila. We say when the avodah was done, it was roy lachila because it could be determined which one was a balmum, and therefore which was a kosher korban, and which therefore could be eaten, the basar of which one can be eaten, and therefore we say if the four are kosher, and the fifth is possible, and they're all pots from Pesach Sheni. But if they got mixed up before Zrika, then in that case, none of them could be eaten. That none of the basar, none of them could be eaten because you don't know which one is a balmum. Chayav Pesach Sheni. Then they have to bring a Pesach Sheni, because we say the avodah of none of them were kosher because we don't know, none of them were, it was not determined on any of them which was a balmum, so none of them could be eaten. So man the Masechet, the one who learned Abaya's chiluk, referring to the case of our Mishnah, Kol Shekin Brisa, he certainly would learn this chiluk in the case of the Brisa. But however, man the Masechet Brisa, the one who learns it on the Brisa, Aval Masnisin loy. But in the case of the Mishnah, in our case of the Mishnah, he would say this chiluk does not apply. Why? Because since the goof of the korban really is kosher, there's no psul on the goof of korban. And if he would remember, then it would be kosher l'achila. It's only because he currently doesn't know, he doesn't remember. Kamishmala Galia is revealed in Shemayim. In Shemayim it's known which is his, which is the one that he specified. So therefore, this chiluk would not apply. Now, the way Tosfos understands it is that even though we don't know, meaning Tosfos learning it is not to say that it's really a korban kosher korban. But even because if we don't know who's registered on the korban, it's not a kosher korban. But since there's no psul in the gufa korban, and theoretically it could be kosher, the psul is not that great, and therefore we say you're potter from Pesach Sheni. Omar Mar, Brisa says Ptur Melasas Pesach Sheni. In the cases that we had that there was a mum, they're all potter from Pesach Sheni. How can you say they're all potter from Pesach Sheni? There's one that his korban was a bal mum. So how can he be potter from Pesach Sheni? The Gemara says Mishum D'Lo Efshar. The reason he's potter is not because he's yoytze, but you just don't have an alternative. It's lo yafsha. Hechi alavid, what should you do? Leiset kol chad v'chad Pesach. Should you say that each one should bring a korban Pesach, should bring a Pesach Sheni? Kamaisich l'azora. They can't say that all bring a Pesach Sheni because four are already yoytze. So therefore, four of them would be bringing a chulun l'azora. Because four of them already made their Pesach Rishon. So since the Arba Minaya Avdelahu, they can't bring another Korban Pesach, Chol Nazar. Laisa Kula Chad Pesach. If you say that they should all bring one Pesach Sheni, Nimsa Pesach Nakal Shaloi L'Menuyev. But you can't, because then the Pesach will be eaten by people who are not registered for it, because since four already were yoytze, the Pesach Rishon, they cannot be registered for the Pesach Sheni. So therefore, you have no alternative. So I'm going to discuss, and next year, the more we'll go through the different scenarios and why there is no option over here, why we don't really have an option to say that the person could bring a Pesach Sheni.